Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the stream scene. It's been a while. We are happy to be back, and should be pretty consistent up until TwitchCon. So I'm joined here by my co-host Hunter. What's up, Hunter? How you been?
I riding that wave of like just above wanting to pass out for like 24 hours straight. But you've been traveling. I have been at
Yes.
home. I have been able to construct my own
You've
schedule.
been
So
streaming a lot.
I have been streaming a lot. How was your trip?
It was amazing. I went to Gamescom, Germany, Netherlands for the first time ever. I had a great time.
So was there some vacation mixed in with the business stuff?
Yeah, it was actually a lot of vacation.
That's
so I got
nice.
to actually do some touristy things and actually see the places I was in versus like normal conventions where it's like, oh, I've been to Boston, but I don't know anything about it because I'm just in the convention
Yeah,
center
just
the entire
in
time.
with blinders on. Yeah. Well, I hope it was fantastic. I saw some pictures and it did look. I've never been. I will one day, hopefully. Um, Today for today's show, we're talking broadcast management, the managers who manage the talent, who really, in circumstances like my own, can't manage themselves. people who
Yes.
get to a point oftentimes where they finally can see really clearly that they need assistance, and a lot of us will struggle with that up until that point and not really know when it's time to reach out. And it's part of the point of talking about what we're going to talk about today with our incredibly special guest, HBFox. HBFox, what is going on? And also, just as a quick follow-up to that, who are you? What do you do?
It's going pretty well.
Nice.
A little bit earlier than I'm usually awake, so it might take me a minute to kind of get into gear here. But
Warm up a bit.
I got coffee. That's all that matters.
That's a good start.
And I think a lot of people in this community and watching right now probably already know who I am. But for those who don't, I manage the illustrious, popular TheHunterWild here on Twitch. And I dabble in a few other things here on Twitch as well. But that's certainly where most people are going to know me from.
Mm-hmm. And a wonderful job you do at I think at all of those things, at the main thing, as well as all the dabblings. You seem to have a diverse array of talents and skills.
I was gonna say I've got my fingers in a lot of pockets, but that just sounds like I'm
wait, pockets? No, pies. If you have them in pockets, please share.
I mean, I'll give you maybe 5%.
Okay, that's good. That's a deal. I mean, you're doing all the work. So
yeah, so we're gonna be talking about broadcast management, which describing in a sentence has been challenging.
We were struggling with this.
It's very much a it's not like a very established role. Like you have your streamer, you have mods, you may have like a video editor, you may have a community manager, but a broadcast manager actually differs from all of those while still kind of touching on all of those as well. So I guess why don't we start with how HB you fell into this role? How did you how did you become this broadcast manager role, and how do you guys figure out what to even call this relationship you guys developed?
So I'm in this role entirely because of Hunter. He was one of the kind of first streamers on Twitch that I really started to watch kind of religiously almost. I was led to him by Tiger Rider, and I had actually planned to start my own stream. And right when I was about to start doing that, Hunter approached me and said, "Hey, you want to be on my mod team?" And I was like, "Well, okay, I'll put off my stream for a little bit, and I'll dedicate my time to the mod team here." And that went to being head mod, went to working directly with Hunter on a lot of things, went to being a manager essentially.
That was very quick too, I think.
It was really quick, which is why I never became a streamer.
Yeah, it's just HunterWild squashing stream dreams from the beginning.
Wow.
And this was, when was this? This was,
oh geez, this
I
was
think it was 3 years ago. Over 3 years ago.
it was over 3 years ago. It was what, 2015, 16, somewhere around there. 15.
Yeah. So that's been quite a while, so talking about in the context of where we are now in 2018, we still don't see a lot of broadcast managers. I think when you and I initially started up, we were thinking, that there were ways in which you could perform this seemingly unique magic to make some things happen for the stream, and then we kind of like graduated that role. We expanded it out over and over again, and at the same time, we were kind of expecting that other people would start seeing the same, possibilities and probabilities for their own streams and want to do the same kind of a thing. We still haven't really seen that pick up in the same way that we expected it to over the last years.
We haven't, and I think part of this is, I'll continue to say this for at least another like 2 years. Twitch is still in its infancy. It's still very new.
Toddlership.
Yeah, and when I started doing this, like, it was barely even alive at that point. So
right.
There isn't really a precedent for this type of role and this type of, I guess, help given to streamers. Everyone is just like, do it on my own, because what's really the alternative? There's no like agency that hires out managers specifically for individual streamers. So I think the people that are broadcast managers are those that, like me, just kind of fell into it. A fantastic example of a manager that I like to use is Molly, Mitten's manager. She's, his wife. So there's an obvious connection there for how she became his manager. And you see those types of things. Verbanderbog for Monkeyism. He's been the head of her mod team, I think, for quite a while now. So we just kind of fall into these positions, and there's no real steps for becoming a manager.
So I want to back up for a minute. I want to ask you guys, how do you define being a broadcast manager? What is that?
Yeah, I've got like 10 questions that are all that kind of thing, like the introductory. Yeah, what is it?
That's, I think, probably the most difficult question to answer for this position. And I struggle with it every single time. Is, when you go out anywhere, you often get the question, oh, well, what do you do for a living? Oh, well, I'm a broadcast manager. So what do you do? I do.
Things you could list out like 80 individual things.
Exactly. Right? It's an amalgamation of everything.
In comparison to these other roles, though, right? You have agencies which perform a very specific function. And I think we had Omid on talking about agency stuff in conjunction with sponsorship stuff, and that seems to be a lot more organizing and orienting around sponsored stuff, working with partnering up with various companies, getting sponsored playthroughs and affiliate deals, and managing some legal stuff, contracts and things that go along with it. The agency and doing many more things, but agencies seem to have that play a very specific role. And you additionally have community managers, which I guess I'm not entirely sure what community managers do, but that seems to be in terms of what the role does and its seriousness or the severity of the role is below broadcast manager. It's something that could, and very often is, an unpaid position. That seems to be really common.
I would say like a community manager is more someone that works with the community versus like the back end stuff for a broadcaster. Like, yeah, they may do some of that kind of administrative stuff, but I would say the main difference there is like a broadcast manager does a lot of things behind the scenes, a lot of administrative work, a lot of like leadership type things, and Whereas a
Definitely.
community manager is more very front facing to the community. Like they kind of do like events or like, maybe help with mods, kind of be like a liaison between the streamer and the community. Where a broadcast manager may not be the face or like the biggest face in chat, whereas they're busy maybe doing some busy work, sending out emails, stuff like that.
Yeah, so kind of using those two examples specifically, you have the agency, which has a big focus on the kind of business aspect of broadcasting. And you have the community manager that has a big focus on kind of the social aspect and is kind of the face of the community. A broadcast manager is like a medium between those two roles.
And can do those things as well, too.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll find managers are, interacting with the community, handling events with the community, stuff like that, but they're also reaching out to sponsors or being that bridge between the broadcaster and the sponsor, as well as doing, I guess, a lot of the paperwork that's involved in that. A lot of the organization of the stuff that nobody ever really sees.
Yeah, it's a lot of invisible
for good
work.
reason.
Yeah, you don't want to see that stuff.
Yeah. If you can see that stuff, then you're probably not doing your job right.
Yeah, it's that's how the sausage gets made. You just want the delicious sausage. You don't want all of that. That's true. Okay, so then a question that kind of extends beyond that. You can very easily, as sort of we're walking through this, you can see how a broadcast manager very easily still has an incredibly powerful and strong role, even if you added in an agency and a community manager separately to handle those specific things. So what is it that's left over there? Like almost like, what's the spirit of that? Is it does it sort of do its own thing? Is it offloading roles from the broadcaster? Is it adding new things to the plate?
I would say all of the above, really. It's something that is going to differ from broadcast to broadcast. That's one of the key things
like from
about
streamer
this.
To streamer?
Yeah,
okay.
That's one of the key things about this role that makes it so difficult to describe. Is no two broadcast managers are necessarily going to be doing the same thing, because every broadcast has different needs, right? Depending on where it is and where it wants to be. So it's kind of up to the broadcast manager to facilitate that.
Yeah, and the thing with being a broadcast manager, and actually with any of these roles, is that none of them are like strictly defined. Like you could have someone that does all of this. You could have some like very small roles. Like, for me, I don't have I have someone that I'm kind of working with to kind of fill this role. But you also have my mod team. I've delegated to do okay, these people kind of help with the highlights.
That's a good word.
These people are in chat a lot. This person helps with the technical bot stuff. So we are trying to define something that is still very, very new, and just keep that in mind when we're talking about this and being a broadcast manager and finding a broadcast manager, becoming one. This is something that is just being invented by the streamer based on the needs of streamers and
which can be
where this industry goes
and super diverse.
How much work is needed?
Yeah, if you look at our stream, my stream versus I don't know, John Salmon. John Salmon has a stream that's it's all multiplayer stuff. It's a ton of organizing and constructing these events and bringing in people from the community. There's a big community orientation with that. Whereas with the stream that I'm putting on, there are huge launch events with all of these giveaways, and I almost never do multiplayer stuff. And it's an entirely different kind of construction for that, and how that would have to be managed would be wildly different on the back end between those two things. Some things would be consistent, but the role that's performed by that manager, I think, would be very different. So with how wildly diverse the broadcasters themselves can be and the needs that they're putting up there, to that same earlier point, it's going to be so variable. So this sort of feels like a more of a need of a custom fit. So not like you can have like a one size fits all kind of situation, or you might that might create a challenge for sort of universalizing broadcast management. At the same time, as you had this idea earlier of having an agency that sort of shops out the different broadcast managers, like maybe finding one that is the fit for you, right? Like you do a more community-based stream, and then there's this other person who puts on who does IRL streams in a very different thing and needs management for like physical locations and scheduling and that kind of, and finding like the right fit for that. That's a really interesting idea for the kind of progress of broadcast management. Oh, this has got my juices are flowing now.
Yeah, and I think you gave a lot of really good examples there of what a broadcast manager can do, like the IRL one, for example, going out and finding locations for certain types of broadcasts and all that stuff. It all kind of falls within the broadcast manager's wheelhouse. And it's going to be that way kind of on any level with any broadcast. There are those similarities and similar needs between each one. And beyond that kind of foundation is where it gets tricky. And that's where a broadcast manager basically needs to find their own work.
Find themselves.
Yeah. And it's something that's really challenging right off the bat. But, when you spend 2 or 3 years in a community and working with a broadcaster, then it starts to become more natural, and, you have the same outlook.
Yeah, and you start to see what the streamer needs.
Yeah, exactly.
What the streamer does in the behind the scenes stuff. And, touching on that, like, what are some things that a broadcast manager can do for a streamer?
I think the easy answer right off the bat is take over the broadcaster's email account.
Which is a very, you gotta trust the person pretty well.
You do. There's a huge amount of trust there. And I always kind of give broadcasters shit for not, handing over those reins when they need to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I completely understand why, because, you've spent all this time building this thing up yourself, and that's not easy to let go of.
No.
But the next step is to let go of it, and handing over the reins to that email account, I think, is the number one thing. And I mean, we all know a lot of broadcasters struggle with replying on a timely manner. So having someone that can kind of do that for you, and instead of you handling all of these emails, the manager just cherry picks specific ones and says, here, these are for you. I got the rest. That alone is a big step.
It's editing out all the stuff that, as a broadcaster who doesn't have anybody as an intermediary, you're seeing everything, and it gets really frantic after a certain point. Sometimes that point is really early on in your career. It can be really variable. But you're getting bombarded by so much all the time. It occupies so much of your attention. It adds an extreme degree of stress after a certain point, and you have to do all the editing of that yourself. And you're seeing everything all at once. Everything is presented as though it has the same value. You have to figure out what's worth replying to. And some people will try and do it with everything. Other people end up doing it with nothing because it feels too overwhelming. Then a broadcast manager gets in there and goes like, here's the wheat, here's the chaff. Let's focus on making some flour. Let's do it.
Kind of in that same vein, one of the key things of a broadcast manager is essentially to give the broadcaster more time.
Yeah.
Because, anyone that is a broadcaster knows that it is an all-encompassing, overwhelming job at times where you literally have no free time. So a broadcast manager can take a lot of that off of a broadcaster's plate.
And also, like, I know some people in chat are freaking out, like, oh God, my email, I don't want to give that up. But like, another thing that you can do is just like, when you form this relationship, is to create a new email address.
Absolutely.
Change that over, and that way you guys share that common email versus, you know, let's say you've had your business email for 3 years and you're not gonna just give over all of your contacts, emails, and everything to someone. Like, just create a new email that's like a business email. That is something that like is a instant portal for the manager, and then from there, you know, that person can forward you to your personal email.
Yeah, another alternative to that is for the broadcaster to essentially create email forwarding with specific tags within the inbox. So any, you know, email that comes in with the address at ubisoft.ca automatically gets tagged with Ubisoft and automatically gets forwarded to the broadcast manager. So there are a lot of ways that you can do that.
These are the sorts of things too, I think that, I mean, judging from our experience, you and I together, these are the things that you tell me to do.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that also that's an important point to make about broadcast management. It totally is a minor extension off of what you said earlier, which is defining your own role and what you're going to do as a manager for the stream. That also includes finding and pushing the ways in which it can be streamlined onto the broadcaster, instead of expecting the broadcaster to tell you all the ways in which you can help them and all the ways in which you're going to be streamlining it for them. You've got to find those ways. You've got to see and enforce how to streamline a lot of that stuff yourself, which requires a lot of research. And
it does.
Yeah, a lot.
One of the big things about the broadcaster and manager relationship that I feel like Hunter and I have really kind of nailed down over the years is the manager should kind of make up for the broadcaster's weaknesses, and the broadcaster should make up for the manager's weaknesses.
Yep.
And kind of at the beginning, it's up to the manager to find that adaptation, because you aren't going to force the broadcasters to suddenly change how they're approaching everything. So finding that work within those weaknesses and then adapting and evolving from there is a big part of it.
That particular balance, I think, is absolutely vital. Yeah.
What would you say are some of the important skills as a broadcast manager? Like, let's say someone's interested in becoming one. What are some skills that you, like, let's say maybe you had going into it versus things that you had to learn that like maybe you can't really prepare for?
I feel like the number one thing, and this probably sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but the number one thing is communication. You have to be able to communicate not just with the people you're working with, but the people that you're approaching as well. You have to understand how to do that in a professional manner, but also balance it with that kind of personal side. That was one of the struggles that I had at the very beginning, reaching out to prospective like studios and sponsors and stuff, was how do I find the balance between professional and personal? So it's, you know, 'cause if you're too professional, then it just feels cold. It feels impersonal. And, you know, this is a very personal industry. So nobody wants that type of person. Well, most people don't want that type of person.
It's not a nobody situation, probably.
Yeah. So I think finding the right balance between being social and being professional in those communications, not just with sponsors, but within the community as well, and with the broadcaster, is probably the number one thing that I would say.
Yeah. And being able to translate that information. Like, you can have an hour-long meeting, but you don't want to have an hour-long conversation with the streamer about that hour-long meeting.
That,
you know, a lot of times you have to be able to distill that and really key information in there, because that's part of the whole point.
That's my number two. Is you have to be able to take notes. If you can't take notes, then, you know, just like seclude yourself for a month somewhere and learn how to take notes.
Yeah, that's a learnable skill.
Yes, it is a learnable skill. And that's something that's gonna adapt and change over time. Like all the notes that I take now are in shorthand on a physical notepad right in front of me. So it looks like gibberish. Nobody can read it but me, but it's
That's
super
the cipher.
quick.
That's the code.
Exactly. That's where all the secrets are kept. Being able to then take those notes and translate them into something tangible and useful, not just for you, but for everyone you're working with, is also key. That kind of ties back into communication.
And and to go with that, like, it's important to keep in mind that the roles should be something that saves the streamer time, not creating more work for the streamer where, you know, you're constantly, you know, either asking like what they should be doing or asking like, or not doing anything and having the streamer having to be like, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Like, I think there's there's definitely a need to understand streaming, the business of streaming, and what goes on behind the scenes. Which, you know, you'll see people in this role be able to pick up pretty quickly, and I think that's important too to be in this position.
Yeah, I think that ties into this one subtle idea that I sort of want to throw out there too is, it does go back to communication. It's not expecting either person in that relationship, assuming that there are just two. There may be a management team or something, or a variety of streamers that you're working with. Maybe you're managing a stream team collectively or something, but not expecting anybody to be psychic either. Like trying to anticipate as much as you can the needs of whoever with whom you're working, but not expecting perfection for that. So still sometimes having to be told, like, here's the thing that I need, that there's no way you could have known that it needed to be done.
The role right now is very much like a learning role. Like, you, like, as a streamer, you will initially, it will take more time because you will have to teach them like what you need, what you do, what they can do for you.
There's a growing period of that learning. The honeymoon gets over really quick. You've got to, then you're working really hard to grow together.
Yeah, I mean, Hunter and I have been doing this for like 3 or 4 years or whatever it's been now, and you know, we're still discovering new aspects to not just the role, but the relationship between the two of us, and you know, how we can improve, how we can change, all that stuff. So it's not something that's ever going to. It's not something that's going to stay consistent. Which, if you want something consistent, this probably isn't the job for you.
It might not be the industry at all.
You know, everyone that is a broadcaster and has worked with broadcasters knows how quickly things can change, and oftentimes how quickly things need to change.
Absolutely.
And that extends to broadcast managers as well. You know, we're all in the same industry. We just have different roles within it.
So I think that ultimately we had 8 different things that all of us are pointing to for communication. Is there anything that's not communication related that's like a necessary skill?
Sort of. One more thing I wanted to say on that.
Okay.
How much time does HB spend hounding you to answer something?
He's gentle.
I can be gentle.
I feel like it's a known thing with streamers. Like you gotta not be afraid to poke and
yes.
and remind and poke and remind again.
So the way I typically handle it with Hunter is, if something has a due date, then I'll give him a reminder well before that due date, because I know he probably won't do it on that reminder. So that'll give me some leeway to say, you know, a day or two later, hey, did you do this thing? Oh no, I'm gonna add it to my list, or I'll put it in another tab, or whatever it happens to be. And then I'll still have a few more days to go, hey, did you do this thing? It needs to be done. So it's all about knowing your broadcaster.
Yes. And to that point, we have a shared calendar, right? With the alerts for our meetings, or something that one of us has to do, or with events that are happening. We have a shared calendar. That's another thing. So you're sharing email, shared calendar, probably shared Discord server that's specifically for the management. But one of the things that I've done for a long time because I need to, and I still do it even when I do it wrong, is I set like 3,000 reminders for something that has to happen, for a meeting, for an event, even for coming on the show every single Monday. It happens at the same time every Monday. And I still have it in my calendar with 3 different alerts, 2 the day before, 1 the day of. And, HBFox tries to accommodate that with the multiple reminders and like the poking and the 2 months in advance. Remember, you got to do this thing.
And unfortunately, in our relationship, that's sometimes where we both have a weakness, in that I kind of need a lot of reminders as well on certain things. Like the Clips contest, for example. We've been doing that for what, like a year? If I forget to set a reminder for myself, I forget to do it for that week.
Yeah.
Surprised you guys have functioned so well together.
Yeah.
I can imagine your calendars.
The calendar, and I think we're even getting better at using the calendar too. That's a lot of this stuff is like giving yourself some breathing room and not like killing the other person figuratively for missing some of that stuff. It's like, okay, so what can we do to fix it for next time? You have to have a functional working relationship in order to improve over time. And I think that's probably another very important one, is that's sort of an adaptable patience, or patience toward adaptability, so that you can calmly and critically assess failures, because we're human. It's not a perfect system. It will never be. You have to be able to adapt with each other. As frustrating as some of the situations can end up being, it's like, okay, take a breath. What can we do to fix this for next time? Or what can we do to fix this today? Things like that are pretty important.
So I feel like that actually can tie into the original question about skills as a manager, and one that if you don't have already, you're going to have to develop really quickly, which is basically active analysis. When something goes wrong, you need to be able to understand that it went wrong and figure out how or why it went wrong, and try to find a way to correct that in the future. And it's not necessarily something that everyone is going to know how to do right off the bat, because it's not something that you necessarily have to use in everyday life, although it certainly has its applications. So being able to analyze a situation or analyze a movement, even if it's a successful thing, what led to this success, and is there room for improvement? All of that kind of falls into the manager's wheelhouse, as well as the broadcaster. But having those 2 parties work together on something like that can produce a lot more success than just making a single person kind of work on that.
Why did a certain thing fail? Why did another thing succeed? Both of those are equally valuable, sometimes in different ways, but the ability to analyze that is very important. And of course, it's not going to be healthy to only be capable of analyzing the negative, or only be capable of analyzing the positive. You're missing out on critical features that allow for growth and progress.
And speaking of analysis, like a data analysis would be, I think, a really helpful skill as a broadcast manager. Being able to look at Solinome or another analytical tool, and look at the stream and being able to say, like, make suggestions to help with the stream. Like, this game's doing well, you should play this, and understanding the growth, the patterns of
being able to crunch those numbers. Yeah, right. Because it's not just the surface numbers in a lot of those cases. It's how that one number relates to this other one in the context of this other thing. That kind of triangulation is way more important than simply seeing like that there was a higher point here, because there may be other reasons that are important to know.
Yeah,
especially because I feel like this is like a weakness of a lot of streamers.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's something that is new to a lot of people because it's not really something that would come into play outside of broadcasting. Being able to, have access to numbers like that and understand what they mean. A big part of it is looking at these numbers and essentially disregarding the surface number and instead focusing on the factors that went into it.
Yeah.
Time of year, time of day, number of people playing a game, number of people in chat, whatever it happens to be. There's all these other factors that produce that surface number. But those are the factors that you need to be looking at as a manager rather than the surface number itself. So
bigger, smaller, anybody can do that. What it means, that takes a talent, and that's a skill that needs to be developed.
Yeah, and a big part of that as well, which even years later is still a big part of my job on the daily, is research. You have to be able to do research. You have to be able to read, obviously, because
it's a good start.
You're going to be reading a lot as a broadcast manager. If you get distracted easily, if you can't focus on something when you're trying to read it, you have to learn how to correct that, because it's oodles of reading. I spend a lot of my time ingesting articles and everything.
What are you looking for broadly speaking? Like, what is a broadcast manager researching when it comes to looking at data, when it comes to looking at articles?
Well, that's going to be situational, right? So it depends on what you're working on. If you're working on something that's directly related to numbers, then you're going to go out and you're going to do research on, say, the history of this particular time of year on this particular platform, the types of interaction that were happening back then, and then kind of looking at the timeline of that and how it's changed over however many years you've gone back to research this stuff. And that again goes back into making your own work. You have to be able to understand and come up with the right types of things that relate to whatever you happen to be doing, and be able to go out and research that
and expand that out. Yeah. So since I mean, like, a lot of these things that are being pointed out, these are things that take time away from we as broadcasters who are the talent. We have to spend time on stream. We have to spend time in front of the camera, playing a game, or creating some scenario, or role playing, or cooking, or whatever it happens to be. Dedicated time with a mic, with a camera, or without a camera, on stream. That is not something that we can do away with. That has to be done. The management stuff those are the things that happen to facilitate that and maximize its potential. But at what point do you think a streamer should be looking at creating a management role for their stream, or looking to hire out a manager?
Well,
what do you think are factors that come into that?
I feel like it's got to be to a point where the streamer has so much to do for the stream that it's just like they find themselves like burning out frequently, or like slacking on important things related to the stream.
But don't you want to do that before you burn out? Don't you want to like sort of feel?
You may not know that you have had too much, though. I feel
definitely.
I feel like you don't really know that you're burning out until it's already kind of past that point.
Right.
And you're like, I just feel miserable every day. I literally end the stream and lay on the couch and I have no energy. And it's like, why?
So I think that's sort of what I'm getting at, is like what leads up to because many people will burn out and never return, or burn out when they've had some success that's building up, and then have this dying channel syndrome where they think that it's dying channel, and it's the self-reflexive thing. And then you just coast at this low tier and you're really upset about it. Management, I think, is one of the many things that you can do to mitigate the effects and prevent it from happening. I think that's sort of what I'm getting at, is like, how do we prevent ourselves from imploding by getting this critical role filled? What are we looking for?
I feel like there are two key phrases that a broadcaster can say that's like the trigger for getting a manager. One is if you say, I wish I had help with this, that's the time to go get a manager. Or two, I don't want to do this, that's the other time to go get a manager. Because those are two things that you say before you burn out.
Oh, at least with frequency.
With frequency, I mean,
it's happening a bit.
It's going to be different for everybody. Obviously, That's the nature of the industry.
Yeah.
But anything kind of along those lines of, I don't want to be doing this right now, or I wish I was doing something else. I wish I had help with this, whatever it happens to be. That's when you should kind of realize that, yes, you need help with this type of thing.
That's interesting.
Now, it's not necessarily going to be in everyone's budget to hire a manager, but that doesn't mean you can't seek out somebody that's, willing to at least give you a little bit of help along the way, whether it be somebody from the community, somebody from your mod team, perhaps just another broadcaster, whatever it is. Having that second party to come in and at least help you manage this particular situation is kind of the right time to start looking at perhaps a more permanent position for that.
Yeah. And I think to this point, there are a couple of critical things that when people are asking about management stuff for me, because we are one of the very few manager broadcaster like core teams. You mentioned budget. Very early on in somebody's career, you can hit this point. We did it. It was within, I think, 5 months of starting the stream. It was partnership was there, or no, it was a little bit after that. I think it was like partnership was there, and then very soon after, it was like we gotta step this up. I think there are a couple of things to look at that are really important. One is the budget situation is being able to afford it, because nobody knows what to pay a manager when you're a streamer. Because it's not, you don't have references. You don't get to go out and go like, hey,
corporate job. Like,
yeah, exactly. You're not going to go on LinkedIn and like just do a little bit of research and digging and ask somebody. I think one of the easy things to look at is a percentage. This is what we initially did, was a percentage of the stream's revenue, the gross for what the stream is pulling in. And the reason why this one I think is particularly valuable is because in an ideal scenario, the manager and the broadcaster collectively team up to increase the value of the stream, which should increase the revenue that the stream is gaining. May not be immediate, because a lot of that stuff is cooking. We're still working on projects we started 3 years ago. In a lot of cases, a lot of that could be a slow progress toward increasing that revenue, but that should be happening. Thus, there is the incentive on the manager's point to seek out new opportunities for revenue, and it frees up time on the broadcaster's side to literally be happier. Hopefully, you spend more personal time doing stuff, and or you can spend more time on the broadcast, which should be bringing you joy as well. Which ideally, both of these things are creating a scenario where more revenue can come into the stream, which not only makes up for that 10% that's going out, 10%, 20%. Really, I think when we were initially looking at this, we were asking some people about the standard, and it was like 6.5, 7% was what
for a corporate environment. That was
corporate environment.
About the percent that people were talking. That's one thing about this position, though. People that are looking to become broadcast managers or already are broadcast managers, you're going to have a lot of people tell you that you should be making a lot more than you are.
Absolutely.
Which in a sense is true. But at the same time, if you make a lot more than you are, then you're inherently taking away from the broadcast at that level.
Right.
And, if you're taking away from the broadcast, then you're not really doing your job, are you?
Yeah. So, and the stress that introduces as well.
Yeah. You have to understand, as with anything in this industry, that when it comes to revenue and when it comes to income, there isn't really a standard. And
right.
Certainly here.
It's because the role's not standardized as well. And
yeah,
everyone's
absolutely.
income is standardized as a streamer. So like,
how much
you have a broadcast manager that, only has let's say 10 hours of work a week, that's kind of just doing that part-time. Or you could have someone that's literally carrying your stream on your back.
Absolutely.
And that might be like a partnership.
And I think that's where a percentage variability can be very valuable. And you guys can negotiate that collectively, what the role is going to entail, what that value is. And part of running the stream as a business properly is trying to assess how growth is going to look, what things you're going to be doing, what actions you're going to take to try and increase that growth, and then how that's hopefully translating into revenue, so that you can project and have targets, see where you're heading, and realign yourself along that way. And that's one of the things that can help keep a manager and streamer together, and being productive, is making sure that those targets are hit. The manager needs to feel rewarded appropriately, and you can reassess this from time to time too. Like, make a hard date on like 6 months down the road. We're going to reassess this percentage. This 6%. It's it's questionable. We'll see how we feel afterward. You get down the road, and it's like, dude, I'm doing like 30 hours of work a week. This 6%, it's like $50. This isn't gonna cut it. We got to do something else here. What do you feel like? You have to make sure that those points are already in place, so it doesn't feel like it's a strain on the relationship. So it's not like, hey, I'm not getting paid enough, let's talk about that. That can feel weird.
Yeah,
you want to get some of those things installed, I think.
And inherently, with a percentage-based income system, it serves as its own kind of driver. The more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it.
Hopefully,
it has like a built-in incentive there, and that's always a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think to that point, I don't think it's ever inherently too early by itself to consider what it would be like to have management in terms of that time scale, and then mapping it out for yourself. If you think that 20% is the fair rate for a boatload of duties that you're going to be delegating out, what revenue point do you have to hit for yourself? What's the net that you'd have to hit in order to be able to make that a possibility, to carve out that 20% and have it be okay? Then right there, you have a goal. You have something to work towards, something that's concrete. And I think when it comes to these kinds of things, that is incredibly valuable. So I don't think it's ever inherently too early, but it can definitely be too late.
So what are some ways that someone can become a broadcast manager? Like,
Good question.
Do you think it always comes from being a mod and working your way up and establish yourself in that community? Like, could you create a resume and just like put yourself out there on social media and be like, hey, like, this is what I can do and I'm available for hire? Like, how does this role foster?
I think there are a number of different ways that it can happen. I've seen it happen, the same way that it happened for me, just being a member of the community and kind of evolving from there. And I've seen broadcasters specifically search out people that have experience in not necessarily broadcast management, but, similar fields. So it's, unfortunately, when it goes down that route, it's like a lot of work stuff is you can't get the job if you don't have experience, and if you don't have, you can't get experience.
Of it.
So I think that direction is going to be a lot more difficult than just say like ingraining yourself in the community and growing and evolving.
That's a good point.
Plus, doing it that way gives you the benefit of learning how the community functions and the broadcast functions.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a huge part of your job. But there's no reason why you can't just put a resume out there. If you've been a moderator for for 3 years and decide you want to move on to a different type of role within the community, well, seeing that you have that experience is definitely going to make a broadcaster feel a bit better about bringing you on board.
Absolutely.
Than having no experience at all. So it's, I would say, just play to your strengths, how you function and how you're comfortable with advertising yourself. Play to that, use that.
That's really interesting. So I think to that very point, in a lot of cases where we've seen at least community manager, somebody sort of elevate to community manager, it's almost always been from within. It's been somebody who was a member of the community who then becomes a mod. That's how mods normally work. Mods who then somebody who's super dedicated to the stream and is, pumping out ideas and seems to be handling things on their own without needing to be poked and prodded in some circumstances, then maybe gets elevated up there. Like they're just inherently showing their value to the stream. And then, from there, sometimes up even one step above to the broadcast manager. That's that organic kind of growth. I expect, though, then again, back to the beginning of the stream, 3 years down the road, I expected something very different in the industry as a whole when it came to management. But I expect at some point in the near-ish future, we would start to see people who are going to manage more broadcasters collectively, like one manager who manages multiple broadcasts, but also exactly this situation where, we have a bunch of mods and they're all very skilled and talented people, but we have one manager and you're not going anywhere. You're not going to get replaced. That's an impossibility. So they might have a really good fit for management, but it just can't be here. They can shop that out somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can easily put that, like what you said, is like I've been a mod for Coke for 3 years, like a mod 4 times a week for 6 hours at a time. Our co-streams in shorter batches, but for a chunk of time. And here's the reference, and here are the other people on the mod team. Talk to them. Exactly how you'd shop out any job.
And you used a key word there, which is reference. Broadcasters can and should be used as references because it's a job. Like when it comes right down to it, it's a job. And the broadcaster, in a way, even if they're not paying you, is your employer if you're a moderator or a manager or whatever it happens to be.
I've written a letter of recommendation actually for one of my mods before.
Really?
So,
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like I use Hunt. I don't think I've ever actually told him, but I use Hunter as a reference whenever I need to put a reference down on something.
Oh, I get calls all the time.
Don't make me paranoid because I literally put you down as a reference on something last night. So it's utilizing what's available to you if you have that experience. And a big part of it as well is being able to advertise your drive. If you don't have a drive and a passion for this industry, then, well, I mean, what are you doing? Why are you here and, not at Corporate Joe Incorporated or whatever?
That's where I was going to work if I didn't become a streamer.
Me too. It's you have to have that drive and that passion, and you need to be able to show that, because that's encouragement for people that are looking to hire you, and it's encouragement for yourself because you're moving forward in an industry that you love.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me. I'm just getting over a cold. And being able to show that to people is just as important as being able to show your experience.
I think to that same point and to the earlier one, these things sort of synthesized resourcefulness. If you're going to be reaching out to a broadcaster and suggesting that you would make a good manager, your resourcefulness is immediately going to be a selling point. If you have these other things that you can point to really shop yourself out, boom. That like if somebody approached me with that, I'd be like, oh, well, you really sold yourself incredibly well. I bet you could do that same kind of thing for this stream when it comes to shopping around for sponsors and stuff. Like you had that go get it attitude, or the go get 'em attitude. You showcase how you can pull together these different points of reference to make a real big selling point for yourself as the manager. That's already good. Like regardless of what the skills themselves are that you might list on this kind of resume, like what you could do, you're already showcasing what you could do when you're reaching out and what you're bringing day one. That the first time that you're approaching somebody.
Really and that kind of comes full circle back to communication. Communication is a huge part of it.
That's gonna be the mantra for the day is communication. Yep.
It is important. I really like talking about this kind of thing because there's like a lot of people see streaming as, a very glamorous job, and everyone wants to be a streamer, everyone wants to be Ninja.
It's easy, man.
And it's honestly not for everyone, and a lot of people will try streaming and realize, oh, like I don't actually like this. And I think it's interesting because there's actually such a need for this type of role, or being a community manager. There's money in this too, and it's only something that's going to grow. So if you're watching this and you're like, I love the streaming industry, but I just can't stream or don't want to stream, but I want to be a part of it. Like, this is something that you can do. This is something that streamers need. So, you know, I hope people out there listening, I hope it becomes something that's more visible in the industry, because there are more people that need it that like can't find someone to fill that role than I think like you'll that I don't know how to say the sentence, but like there's a lot of streamers that need someone like you like out there. So
and it's really hard to ask
hope
for
to see
that.
more people like this. Yeah,
right.
It is.
Like, what do you do? You put something out on Twitter? It's like, hey, I'm looking for a manager. You're going to get thousands of people who are like, hey, yeah, I can do it. Seeking it out by itself is very challenging. The concerns that you have of making the wrong choice, like that can be overwhelming too, whether or not it's a legitimate fear in the moment. Like you're like, oh God, am I going to bring somebody in who's going to take my stream? You're already afraid enough that you're going to take the stream, and you have total control over yourself. Like bringing somebody else in, that's even more frightening. It is definitely a real challenge. I'm really excited. Well, I'm excited for this particular stream right here, for getting this information out there and to do more stuff like this and to hopefully help foster that, because there are I think you made the fantastic point that streaming itself isn't for everybody, but some of those people they really understand the industry and they really understand people. They just can't bring it all together in the unique way that streaming requires, but they can be great midwives for a stream. You know, nothing, you can't, these kinds of things have magic behind them, and you need some damn wizards. You can't, I'm really struggling with the words too. There's something poetic bubbling back here. I want to get it out.
Struggling with the words is the major part of describing broadcast managers.
That's true. It's very fitting.
It is. And I feel like it's also important to note that everything that we're talking about here doesn't just apply to Twitch. You know, it applies to all broadcasting platforms, whether it be, you know, Mixer or YouTube or I guess Facebook even. It's all the same type of platform, and it's going to differ slightly, obviously, between each platform, but generally the roles are similar.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, HBFox. Well, I mean, you're the only guest here, so what do you think it would be like, since I don't think that I've seen this fully developed yet, what would it actually look like to have a manager who did manage multiple streams? What would that person do? What are the points of overlap where, like, you know, sort of like with an agency gets to take all of their clients and go, who's going to be good for this particular game or this particular sponsor, and then, you know, grabs them all in together, tosses them out to the sponsor bites or doesn't, you know, and then you've done one thing for 8 people. What ways do you think that there would be overlap there? How much time do you think would have to be dedicated to like individual streams? How do you think that would work, managing multiple streams at once with your kind of role?
I think you'd kind of get to a point where you have to ask yourself, am I managing a bunch of individual streams, or am I managing a team of streamers that aren't necessarily under the same label? Because, you know, team management is very much a thing on Twitch and has been, I think, longer than individual broadcast management has been. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of similarities just between those two roles doing that particular work. And it's all going to depend on the needs of your broadcasters. You know, it's easy to say, oh, well, I'm going to give equal attention to every broadcaster that I'm managing. But, you know, every broadcaster may not need that equal attention. One broadcaster may need it a lot more than another one. So you're going to have different levels of work that you need to do with each person.
So should you be picking up the same kind? Like 8 different hunters, as miserable as that would be?
I mean, that's that's really up to you. It's really up to the type of work that you want to do. If you want to do the same kind of work for a whole bunch of broadcasters, then perhaps you should be looking for a bunch of broadcasters that are in similar positions. But if you want to kind of expand your reach and your experience, then, you know, get a bunch of broadcasters that need help with this one thing, get some broadcasters that need help with a completely different thing, and just kind of work that all together. It's very fluid, this position, and the work that you need to do. And that makes answering questions like this really difficult, because it's, you know, it's going to be different for every single broadcaster.
I imagine that somebody would be able to refine their role this way, right? Like I'm thinking about, like, you know, what you can put in a single tweet that you're going to pin and be like, hey, I'm a broadcast manager, and, you know, contact me if you want this specific type of thing, this specific type of thing. And then you would end up with all of the same type of person, or the more organic stuff in the alternative, which I think would be more my style, because I like working one-on-one with people if I were managing, if I abandoned streaming, and have a smaller group of broadcasters that all have unique needs, and they're all just weird, quirky people, and working individually with them to try and really maximize each one of their streams to its own individual strengths. I think there would be very different, much like with everything as you're putting out in this industry, it's super variable.
You know, you can have a bunch of broadcast managers that each specialize in different things in a way. So, you know, if you're a broadcast manager that really likes to do event stuff, then you can shop yourself out as, you know, hey, I'm a broadcast manager that has a passion for, you know, event planning and execution. Here's some stuff that I've done in the past. If you're looking for this type of help, hit me up. I'm available. And, you know, you can do all these different events for a bunch of different broadcasters. And the nice thing about going that route is you can build your events off of each other, type of thing. You're working on all these things in parallel, and the ideas bounce off of each other, and you make better and better events because of it, streamlining the stuff that can be streamlined, and looking at what worked and what didn't, and creating new pieces of these events based off of that. So you can specialize, or you can just jump in the deep end and do everything all at once.
I think that's going to be, again, one of the great values of this particular stream, and revisiting this again probably next year, is when there's almost everybody struggles when there's too much freedom, too much creative freedom. And with this kind of thing, there's just too much. It's everybody gets to ask, where do I start? What do I do? You just get to pick whatever. I don't even know then what do I pick? This kind of thing can help, even while we're still talking about how free it is, can help really put some of these things into tidy boxes. Even if when you open up the box, it's still Pandora and everything starts flying out, you still get to go like, okay, well, it's kind of in this area. We're going to pile things around the box too, but this is sort of what we're looking at. That's something to chew on. That's something to think about if I wanted to become a broadcast manager.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess, to use a bit of a different analogy for it. When you commission an artist, you don't just give them the money and say, hey, create whatever. It's, you know, here's a general idea of what I'm looking for or what I'm wanting to do. And then you work together to create this hopefully beautiful masterpiece. Right. So, and it's the same thing with this type of work, is you don't just give somebody free reign of everything.
Yeah, certainly.
And as somebody in that position, you don't give yourself free reign of everything, because you're going to end up taking on too much, and you're not going to be able to succeed in the way that you want to. Generally.
Yeah. Lowco, what do you think you'd be willing to delegate, or things that you would even invent for a manager? I don't know. Actually, that might be too pressing. Some of this is honestly very personal to a broadcaster, which is interesting.
I would say like one thing that I've been having someone help with is drafting up, creating like events and event proposals. So like, let's say, you know, you like what you do, Hunter, with like games coming out where it's like Monster Hunter, you do a bunch of giveaways, you do like, you know, cool like thumbnails, maybe you have like some shirt designs, stuff like
new
that.
emotes. We had 7 new emotes done for the event. HBFox did
Yeah.
that like all on his own.
So drafting up like proposal pitches for companies and getting that done and scheduled ahead of time. So like, you know, a month in advance, you know, sending out an email or a proposal for Tomb Raider and be like, hey, these are the things that I want to do on the stream. And, you know, how can we work together? Like, this is what we can do. And having someone do that kind of stuff where it's like, initially there's a learning curve to figure out what you guys want to do, but then it's like, okay, well, now we can apply this concept to this game that's coming out, and then this game that's coming out in a few months, and then it's kind of like a mold for future proposals. So that's something where it's like work that's kind of like busy work and not really like, you know, it's not something that's like, I don't know, like it's something that can be delegated, I guess is what I want to say, is like that kind of stuff I think is beneficial to have someone do for you, where it's like it's a very teachable thing and it's not too personal either.
Yeah. Because obviously there are a lot of things that the streamer alone needs to do, notably streaming. That's a lot of time, and it takes
that's something that the broadcast manager can't really do.
Can't really do it the same way.
Can't really help with that.
I'm looking for ways to do it. Don't worry.
I know. You know what? We don't even need Hunter anymore.
If we can just eliminate the streamer completely, we'll be golden.
You know what? I will take the manager's cut to have just started the brand. Then I'll just go relax. Obviously, the streamer millions, so I'll just go relax in Tahiti.
Go retire.
Alaska. I eat cold.
I do want to get into the Q&A because we have a lot of really, really good questions. So I'm really excited about it. So our first question is, when is the time to consider hiring a broadcast manager if you have a good team of reliable mods that can help or do help with a large amount of the manager duties already? I would say, like, if you see someone that can fit that mold, right? Because like if your mods are doing a lot of the broadcasting duties, like that's a lot of burden on the mods. I mean, unless you're paying them, right? Like the mods already do enough with modding the chat and working the bots behind the scenes stuff, and now if they're doing emails and proposals and event planning, like that's a lot. So it's like I would say if you can find someone to take that load off the mods, like you want to keep an eye out for someone like that. Or if you see a mod that's really stepped up and is kind of taken a leadership position in those type of duties, and then it's like, hey, like
even multiples.
Let's make this more serious.
I think we initially were working with Danotage and HBFox. But Lowco, as you know well, Danotage has 10,000 things. It was very challenging for him to keep up with all the stuff that had to get done. But we worked with, we had multiple people working together. We had HBFox and Danotage working together for several months initially, and in conjunction with mods doing stuff. But I think to this specific question, there's one unique quality to this one. And it's something that I think bothers a lot of us. And I know has been bothering me for quite a while, which is that mod help is free help. So unless if you're paying your mods and they're doing a lot of this stuff, then maybe you don't necessarily need to get a manager. But if they're doing all this work completely unpaid, then that by itself, for a variety of reasons, may be a reason to put somebody in a role to get paid for doing work that actually helps you get paid. All of our mods, all the mods for every stream are effectively helping us make money, and they're doing it out of kindness and commitment to the community and to the broadcaster with no recompense monetarily, even though they actually deserve it most of the time. Obviously, there are some mods that are there honorarily and whatever, but that's a different situation. If they're actually doing work that benefits you economically in your business, they deserve something. Whether or not they get it is a different thing, but there's some dessert there, just desserts. putting somebody in a role and actively defining payment for that and actually offloading some of that work from the mods who aren't getting paid is a really good idea.
Yeah.
And then there's all kinds of value to having somebody in a paid position for that as well. So I would definitely consider it on those grounds.
Yeah, and I think I would add to this, when you're in a position where you have a team of mods that are doing a lot of this work for you, that are choosing to do a lot of this work for you, before you jump straight to bringing on a manager, perhaps take some time to recognize what work needs to be done that isn't being done already.
Sure.
And, is that the type of work that certain mods can take on with perhaps some compensation on some level, rather than bringing on a singular person and giving them all of this stuff? If you have these people that are already dedicated to the community and to this role, find a way to utilize it, because those are going to be the people that are almost guaranteed to do a great job in that position.
What's more, if you have, much like with anything, streaming on one PC, if your GPU goes out, what are you going to stream on? If you have one manager, and that manager, and you don't have a strong relationship, or even if you have a fantastic relationship, that manager has to make a different choice for some reason. The pay is not enough, and you literally cannot pay them more. They have to move across the country to take care of their ailing grandmother who raised them, and they're not going to be able to dedicate the time anymore. Things like this. You suddenly have nothing being done by a manager anymore. If you have if you have roles delegated on a smaller scale to 4 different mods, wonderful. One of them gets really sick for 3 weeks, and the other people are out balancing it back out, and you're still paying everybody a small share of your 15%, whatever it is you decide to cut out for them. That's wonderful. It's sort of more of a spider web instead of like a singular column post that may collapse and then you have no house anymore. You got a whole spider web. You clip a couple of those things off, the web's still good to go. So it's even in some ways, it can be a more beneficial scenario to have the multiple mods who are also fulfilling or filling some management roles.
Yeah. Our next question comes from, I think it's Alzir, who asked, how do you build the confidence in your own abilities when perhaps you feel you could do more, but also don't want to appear unmodest or...
How do you build the confidence in your own abilities when you feel like you do more, but you don't want to appear immodest or intrusive? I don't know. That sort of feels like a life question too. Like I'm thinking about this in broader terms.
I mean, I would just say I would just say if you see a streamer that you watch or mod for slacking in an area, there's nothing to be... You shouldn't feel that you're intruding or being unmodest when clearly something's not getting done. If you're wanting to step up and you see a need for it, I don't think that that should be anything. I don't see that going poorly.
I think I have to get a little meta for a second on this. Modesty is a point that I talk about with frequency. Ever since I learned this one point of comparison between an overt modesty and an internal modesty, and that there's a surface modesty, which is how you use your words and express things about yourself to others. And then there's an internal modesty, which regards how you actually consider yourself. And I feel like if you have an extreme willingness to learn from your mistakes, to accept your own ignorance and want to destroy it by learning things and gaining wisdom and asking other people for help and how to do things better, I think that's an internal and much more genuine modesty than lip service, where you're like, oh, I'm not that good at stuff, or oh, that's an undeserved compliment, or oh, I'm really kind of just okay, regardless of whether or not you are. That's lip service that may not connect in any way to how you actually feel and how you actually treat your engagement with the world. So I think in regard to management stuff, I feel like you can, be direct about what you're capable of doing, what you honestly feel like you're capable of doing, and specifically points you're capable of growing. So you don't have to talk about like where you're bad. Talk about where you're gonna be good. You know what I mean? Like that's the same subject matter. It's like I'm bad at doing X. I'm bad at answering emails. As opposed to like this is a growing point of mine. I'm tackling it in a variety of ways with this, and this, along with, and I can see how the things that I'm learning about how to handle that can be applied to this thing and that thing, and it's all like growth points. Selling that is huge, and it's the same subject matter as if you said like I'm bad at it. Take that and flip it on its head to make it a really sellable point, and then actually, of course, follow through ideally. But I think that makes a big difference.
So kind of addressing the confidence part of that specifically, building that confidence. Somebody said it in chat, and Hunter used to say it a lot as well. And I think it applies brilliantly. Fake it till you become it. It sounds, people say that a lot as a joke, but it's genuinely good advice. I think it was Bruce Lee put it a little more eloquently. As you think, so shall you become.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I have done repeatedly. I have faked this confidence, or faked this directness, this I'm going to leave that part out of it, actually. It goes down a very weird road. You fake this part of you until it genuinely becomes a real part of you.
Yep.
You don't have to have the confidence to do a thing if you can fake the confidence to do a thing.
Absolutely.
Because it's the same, regardless. Yep. It's the same, and it becomes just second nature, or first nature, I guess, technically. It's a lot of people use it as a joke, but it's genuinely good advice to pretend you're good enough to do a thing, because you will then become good enough to do that thing.
In a lot of ways. I mean, I don't think you can pretend to be a brain surgeon long enough to be an incredibly good brain surgeon.
There are limits.
There are some limits when it comes to particular skill sets, but certainly when it comes to attitudes and behaviors, 100% without a doubt, this advice continues to be true. The way that I usually have the follow-up or the context for why it's valuable is and ways to play it out is, for me, the thing that I've done for a long time is imagining the best version of myself. Just make it up. What are the qualities that I wish I had, and build those all into this future person, and then pretend to be that guy the whole time. What would that dude do in this situation? Then do that thing, and eventually those become your behaviors. You don't have to question that and wonder what that guy would be. Suddenly you've stepping through into time, you just sort of merge with that body, and that's who you are now. Same thing works here. That's the fake it till you become it stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually do have a tangible example of this type of thing. Back when I first kind of started doing this, one of the things that I struggled with, as we mentioned near the start of this broadcast, was writing emails that have that balance of professional and personal. And one day I had to send an email out to Sandbox, and this was back when Andy worked at Sandbox. I think most of us here know Andy.
Andy Unique.
Yeah.
Chef extraordinaire.
I was super paranoid about sending him an email because, he was the guy at the time. He was the one that all people in my position look up to and want to be, right? So I had to send him this email, and I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to pretend I'm good enough to do this. And I did it. And he actually came back and commented about how much he really enjoyed the formatting and the type of email that I sent him. So it's an example of how that works. Faking being good at this particular thing ended up being actually good at it. So it applies.
Works out.
Huh.
But
I'm just,
I thought you were like, huh?
No,
You're like, huh?
that's really cool. Yeah, huh?
Huh?
Like embodying that thing. Yeah, it's so interesting too in a lot of some of the ways things with we as broadcasters can see when we're friends with people who role play as well. There are so many, like GTA role players is an easy go-to. Arc role players, when they're playing a role, they are masterful. But then you talk to them in private conversation and they have all this anxiety about you doing this one really easy, small thing in life. And I'm like, bro, just role play it. Just you got this. Pretend you're that guy. And the confidence is the same thing with like, getting in backstage. It's like, walking in like you own the place. It's like, seriously, it's exuding a confidence that doesn't have to match up with what's inside, but that immediately gets people on board. It breaks past that first or second barrier that people have with communication, and it makes them immediately feel more comfortable with you. And that gets you in the door. That confidence, which is the role playing it.
I think this question was right up your alley, Hunter.
Yep.
Our next question comes from Nonstop Train, who says, any advice on where to find managers or how? We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in the show, but to keep it short, look within your community, look within your mods, look to see if anyone's stepping up. And I would say look to people that, like HB, that that are in these positions that may have a recommendation for you. Mm-hmm. Try to find people that, do this and may be able to help too. So, anything that you guys want to add to that?
I think that approach is a fantastic way to do it, but I always have to add a bit of a disclaimer when it comes to Hunter, in that he does things very quickly. He just jumps right in. You take me, for example, I went from random person in the community to manager in a matter of like 3 or 4 months or something.
Maybe even faster than that. I don't know.
That's really, really quickly.
Yeah. First day in the stream up to manager.
Yeah. It's, maybe don't necessarily take that quick of an approach to it, even though it worked out in this case. Take a moment to think it over and analyze and gradually take those steps.
And when it comes to the organic version of it too, I think a very fair and kind and honest approach would be to pitch some ideas at a mod, somebody that you'd like to put into a management position, without talking about management with them. Like, how would you handle this kind of thing? What do you think about this stuff? Work those things out, and you'll catch a red flag here. They're gonna be like, oh, well, you're still a great mod. Just in your own head, you don't actually tell them this. You're still a great mod. We're just not gonna, look at management stuff. That seems like a perfectly fine and honest enough way to do it. Sort of feeling people out,
kind of like a trial, them in like little tasks and see how they handle it.
Right.
I like it.
Taking a project or something and approaching that mod or whoever it is and saying, hey, you want to work with me on this? See if we can, do a thing with this. And if they say yes, then, you take that interaction into consideration for moving on to perhaps a manager position in the future.
Or your mod team as a whole. Like, hey guys, what do you think? I'm thinking about this kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. And maybe the same person, HBFox, steps up well above and beyond expectations or whatever repeatedly, and is consistently shows that kind of dedication. It's it's a hole in one. It presents itself to you in that sort of way.
I like that idea. Our next question comes from Indiana, who asks, what are things that you think are completely off limits for people who are interested in becoming community managers? What is something that every manager should say, oh, heck no to?
Oof. I think
I don't know.
I think I'm a terrible person to answer this question because I'm notoriously bad at saying no to additional work.
I mean,
that seems to be true.
Like, maybe not a specific thing, but like if the workload is becoming too much, where your personal life is affected, your work life balance is being affected, maybe you're getting anxiety, or maybe you have other obligations like an actual job or school or something where that's starting to hurt.
Yeah, I think it comes back to, something that can be said for literally everything in life. Know your limits.
That's what I was going to say.
Recognize where those lines are, where those limits are, and, push them every now and again, but don't consistently take on more that is above and beyond those limits that you're aware of.
Yeah.
It's going to happen at times where you take on more than you can handle. That's how you discover those limits.
Right.
But don't make an effort to push so far beyond them that everything just crumbles.
Yeah, and I think the ability to go back to the communication. Pretty sure communicability is like transferring diseases and things.
Close enough.
The communication thing. While I wouldn't think that there is a specific type of thing that all managers should say, oh heck no. Being able to be clear about the things that you won't be willing to do as an individual manager or as an individual streamer or whatever. Likewise, when you discover them, which is the same point I think HBFox was making, if you see that you are coming up against a wall and you're not capable of handling this type of thing or this volume of things as a manager, I think you need to be willing to kindly make it clear that you can't do that or that you need to tone down how much you're doing because for any number of reasons. It affects the other work. And of course, you want all of that stuff to still be strong and capable of getting done. If you're doing too much, everything can get affected. You need to be able to communicate that, I think. I think it's less about the specific items that have to be off the plate and more about knowing yourself, your own limits, and being able to communicate them when you discover them.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm still trying to think of like an example that's like one specific thing. I would just say something that's like illegal.
Oh well, yeah. Go get me some drugs real quick. Caffeine? You want caffeine? We can do that.
Now, to be fair, I did do that for you at TwitchCon last year.
Caffeine. That's absolutely true. That is absolutely true. He tried going. Oh, and all of the 7-Elevens and whatever were completely out of stuff too,
yeah.
or like 3 miles away.
I think that's less manager and more just, friend doing a thing for a friend. But, if he wanted to pay me for it, I wouldn't say no.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
But yeah, so I agree with what you guys mentioned.
Honestly, even nail appointments, it's possible. I think HBFox would have been willing because I had to get my nails done for a charity event. And I had to make an appointment. He totally would have been willing, I think, to make that nail appointment.
Yeah, it just goes back to what you're willing to do and what you're not and where your limits are. Mm-hmm. I don't draw my line at making nail appointments. I'll do that. It doesn't bother me any. So
we'll go together.
Yeah. I would say things that would be like financially costly to the manager as well. Like, let's say the streamer asked you to fly out to a convention, but like wouldn't pay for it. Like,
oh yeah, that's true. It's a very good point.
Something that's costing money that they're not reimbursing you for. That
even more than money. A lot of stuff. Like, I think it would obviously be off limits to draw an ultimatum and go like, you have to leave your boyfriend or girlfriend because it's cutting in too much time into your management role. Like that's not your place. Like you need to talk to them about management stuff, not their personal life and how that's affecting it, just whether or not this thing is being affected at all and how that needs to be changed, not give the personal advice for how to change that with the personal ultimatum. Cost, wherever it happens to be, there are points where I think that would be off limits. Asking somebody to take on a personal burden that can't be professionally compensated appropriately, that's off limits. I would say, yeah, that's a good point.
The Loop Pursuit asks, do you as a manager have a certain sense of promotional responsibility? Do you feel a certain amount of pressure behind helping a streamer with an ever-growing community?
Short answer, I think for me personally, is no. But that's a bit of, I think, a unique situation for me because I've been a part of this community for so long. It's one of the original communities that really got me back into Twitch after I kind of left it during the JTV days. So I'm so ingrained in this community that its growth is my growth type of thing. It all happens naturally and simultaneously. You know, I do put in a lot of work to make it happen on my end, but it's all backed up by passion for the community. So I don't necessarily, I don't necessarily feel any pressures with it. I mean, there are stresses that come with the job. You're gonna have stresses with any job, but as far as feeling any sort of uneasy type of pressure, it doesn't really apply to me in this specific scenario. Outside of this specific scenario, I absolutely see that kind of stuff coming into play. But
so you think it would with other managers or with a standard manager?
I think it would. If you're going into a situation where you maybe aren't necessarily overly familiar with all the people around you, the community that you're diving into, absolutely there's going to be a lot of pressure there, and there's going to be a lot of stressors that come into play. So it's something that I think will apply to anybody that doesn't organically find themselves in the position.
Do you feel like it is a job of the broadcast manager to be responsible for the streamer's growth?
I think it's absolutely part of the broadcast manager's job to facilitate that growth. I mean, it's why we're here, to take a lot of stuff off of the managers or the broadcaster's plate and, you know, take it over ourselves and improve it if we can, and fill those roles to help the community and the broadcaster grow. And in turn, the community and the broadcaster will help the manager grow, and it all just kind of works in this symbiotic relationship with each other, or at least that's the goal. It's not necessarily going to work that way every single time, but ultimately that's what we aim for.
And we have one more question that comes from Wes, who asks, any advice on how to approach people? I know a lot of tiny streamers that I want to help because I watch this every week and I know some things. But what is the best way to not sound cocky or like an ass when you say, I know how to stream even if I don't stream?
Oh.
Well, okay, so if you're part of a streamer's community and you, let's say, message that streamer and, you know, maybe you're like, hey, like, I can offer you some advice or something. Like, I feel like that's like a lot more of a genuine and likely a better interaction than, let's say, you're messaging a streamer and they don't really know you that well, and you're just like, hey, like, I know about streaming, let me help you. Like, and it also depends on the streamer too. If a random person messages me and is trying to tell me what to do, I'm gonna be like, what? Like, I feel like I'm in a pretty decent spot. I feel like I've been doing okay so far. Whereas if you're approaching someone that's smaller and, you know, still new to the thing and still has a lot to learn about streaming, like, you know, they're probably going to be more receptive to advice as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of it may be a matter of how much it sounds like you're backseat streaming. You know, in the same way as, you know, when it comes to streaming and backseat gaming, everybody's there and has the opportunity to tell you exactly how you're failing at everything you're doing in the game. And sometimes they will do exactly that. And it very rarely is that accepted with warmth and grace by a broadcaster. And we are dealing with that, as you know, on a very near daily basis. So we get off stream and suddenly get that same kind of thing with the stream, usually not going to go over very well. How to approach people for that kind of stuff, I guess it depends on what you're actually trying to do for them. So if you're trying to sell yourself as a manager, you can, try and showcase those abilities, or, in the absence of having a portfolio, because it's not, creative work or anything of that matter, which you still may be able to gather information in a portfolio like scenario, or collection thing. You can, I think, still sort of, well, what we're talking about earlier is like package up your abilities, what gives you the confidence to say that you can achieve those things, and why it would be valuable to that other person. And that can include refining elements of the broadcast itself, streamlining certain things, or being able to provide critique for the broadcast, in addition to handling some networking stuff and trying to reach out for getting keys and whatever else may be in your wheelhouse as a manager, whatever your personal setup would be. So I think that would make that's sort of a different kind of approach than, hey, hire me because I can help you suck less. That one's not going to go over as well, and any iterations of that wouldn't go over very well.
So I think I would add to this, if you're approaching someone like this, don't just give help, offer help. Don't present it in a way that you're pushing this information or this assistance on the person. Ask them if they want it. Be constructive with your words and be kind with your words, because we all know that it's very difficult to portray tone over text. So be careful about how you word, or maybe less be careful, more be mindful about how you word your approach to these people. And if it's worded in such a way that would make you unhappy with it, you can guarantee that it's going to make them unhappy with it. So don't push yourself on them. Offer yourself to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, people are stubborn, or, they think they know what's right and what's best for their stream, and they may not want advice. And, you may think that, you have a better idea of how to go about doing things, but, just keep in mind, like, sometimes people just like they don't want help. So yeah, I definitely agree with like asking first before just like being like, hey, these are all the things that you're doing wrong, and here's how to fix them.
Because the context makes a difference.
Yeah,
it does.
If I'm walking down the street and somebody goes like, you look like garbage, I'm not going to be in a great mood about that one. I'm not going to be receptive to that. Whereas if my girlfriend is like, you look like garbage, you might want to change, I'll be like, oh, yeah, well, I mean, as much as I like this thing, okay. I mean, I guess and that makes sense. And the context is very different. If somebody in the channel starts and I've never seen them say anything before, they just immediately start critiquing the stream, I'm going to be hostile right out of the gate. Yeah. HBFox could say the exact same things. I'm like, oh, I better get on that. Right. That context makes a big difference for the exact same subject matter.
Yeah. So I think on the point specifically of communication, with people that you don't necessarily have a developed relationship with, I would say avoid reference to the singular and instead reference the collective. So instead of saying to somebody, I can do this for you, say, we can do this together type of thing. That way you're not presenting a scenario where you're necessarily taking something away from them or going above them. You're working with them on it.
Yep.
Very well said.
Because you were selling, you're selling an attitude and approach. I'm such an attitude and approach kind of guy. And that's first and foremost. Anything can get done if you have the right attitude and approach, no matter what your skill set is. If that's the thing that you're pitching, the way that you're pitching it, I think it's going to be you're already off to a great start.
Awesome. So that is actually going to do it for us today, guys. We're going to do some shout outs here. And we're gonna start with HB. HB, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Yeah.
Tell us where we can find you.
And what we'll find when we get there.
So that's difficult because I don't stream. But you can find me on Twitter at HBFox TV. You can find me every day that Hunter streams in his channel. And I also have a bi-weekly podcast that I put out with another broadcaster here on Twitch. So we talk about anything and everything related to the industry, and basically just keep an eye out on my Twitter for when we release each episode.
Where does it get released?
Everywhere. We release it in video format here on Twitch and audio format on basically every platform. Google Play, iTunes, Spotify.
What's it called?
It's called Press Pause Podcast, but pause like animal pause.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'll put the Twitter hashtag in the chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
feel free. And give us one takeaway. If you know someone watching this and there's one thing to take away from this episode today, what would it be? And we can actually just like each give our own.
I had one, but now I lost it.
Put me on the spot here. Jeez. I would say take the initiative. If it's something that you're passionate about, if this is an industry that you really want to push forward, take the initiative to push it forward. Make those steps that you don't necessarily see other people making.
Yeah. Ooh. I like how not specific that is, but super applicable.
Well, you know me, I am non-committal to the last.
I think as a good broadcast manager, I think that does become critical. So if you can do that beforehand, ooh, yes. Well, that's good. It is good.
Hunter, do you have one or you want me to go?
I did again, but I lost it again. You go.
Okay. So I would say, I mentioned this earlier, but I would say if you're someone out there that has a passion for this industry and you're coming to these episodes and you don't even stream, but you just like these shows, like this is a very viable role that streamers need, and there's a lot more out there that streamers need, and you just like think about like what you can do, what skills you have that you know that there's a need for, and market yourself towards filling that role for streamers. Like I don't know, I always encourage people to think outside the box. Even if you want to stream, even if you currently stream, maybe you're just starting streaming, or maybe you're just like a smaller streamer. Like you could still, take on other roles in the industry, and that can really just like help you and help you out your own stream too, like inadvertently too. So, I would just say, think outside the box.
Yeah, and those are the kinds of things that are going to give, as the manager, that are going to give you and the broadcaster an advantage, and that it also helps you sell yourself, thinking outside the box, because then you can apply ideas to the pitch that are custom tuned to that broadcaster, that immediately they're like, oh, you would be a great addition. Ooh, I like that. Like getting them all fired up. That can be cool stuff. Or if it just doesn't work out, then you tried your best. All right, I think I might have one. As the broadcaster looking for management, whether it's you're going to be shopping around for one or developing from inside, I think you hear this kind of stuff from me a lot on the show. I think you have to do some work yourself before you actually reach out. And I think some of that work involves brainstorming and actually sitting down and having some dedicated time set aside for figuring out what you need. Write it down. It does not count if it's just kind of nebulously floating in your head, because when it comes time to actually have a conversation, those things never show up. If you have a list, that you easily have a point of reference and an anchor, a solid anchor for what you want to talk about and what you are searching for. And you will always be able to reference that when it comes to bringing a manager on board, whether it's from the outside or whether it's from your mod team, your community, what have you. What do you actually need? What could a manager bring to the table for you? It doesn't matter if there's one out there who currently does it. You can help somebody do it. You can help create that role. HBFox and I, we co-created the role that he has and the performance that he does there, and that I do with this stuff all together. We co-created it. A part of that was the discovery process. We have a lot of meetings too. We write a lot of stuff down, and a lot of this comes out of that. Brainstorming, literally writing it down, figuring out what you need.
Awesome. And while we have you talking, why don't you tell us where we can find you and what you're doing?
It's hard to get me to not talk. I'm currently streaming. I keep wanting to call it Theme Hospital. 2 Point Hospital.
I know. I've done that so many times.
And I've never even played Theme Hospital.
Me neither.
Everybody's like, oh, is this like Theme Hospital? Now it's just stuck in my head. I'm currently streaming 2 Point Hospital over on my stream. It's our stream, mine and HBFox's, over at twitch.tv/TheHunterWild. I'll be doing that in just a little bit today. And on the 7th, September 7th, Spider-Man, which I'm now really excited for, Spider-Man on the PS4. We're going to be doing 12-hour streams back to back, a whole launch event, the thing that we do. You can, I think one of the really important places to follow is going to be Twitter. Every time. I think it's an easy place to keep up with everything that I do, with who I am and how I'm developing as a person, which is weird, but I like doing this with other people. Like we're growing together. That's part of what Twitch does as a community collectively, and as individuals as a part of that. Likewise with what I'm going live with, art that I have started to create again. I used to be an artist, and all the various musings that I have. Those are some good spots. But what about you, Lowco? Where can we find you? What you doing?
Oh, well, I stream too sometimes on twitch.tv/Lowco, 6 days a week, 6 hours a day. I am currently also obsessed with 2 Point Hospital. Can't get enough of it. So it's so much fun. So playing a lot of that. Gonna be checking out the Battlefield 5 beta this week.
Tomorrow?
I'll be playing it on Wednesday. And then Spider-Man this weekend. So September is really just jam-packed. I'm so excited for this month. Yep. You can find me on Twitter too, twitter.com/Lowco2525. And last but not least, guys, if you guys enjoy this content, definitely throw the Twitch a follow. We do shows here every single Monday at this time, covering a variety of topics on the stream scene. We also have the Stream Doctor Tuesdays at 4 p.m. So that is tomorrow. 4 p.m. the Stream Doctor will return with Dr. Lowco in the house, where basically you submit your channel and I will give you live feedback on stream, and I'm nice about it, so don't worry, it's not scary. It's good. It's really helpful. So I definitely recommend checking that out tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/StreamItSquare. We're basically everywhere. StreamItSquare, Twitter, YouTube, our website. We also have a Discord if you guys need more help, if you guys have more questions about anything streaming. Check out the Discord because it is literally jam-packed with streamers, industry folks, artists, a ton of helpful people, mods. So definitely check that out. And we'll be here next week at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Channel will be live tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern with the Stream Doctor. So hope to see you there, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate you guys being here, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.